Hello everyone, I'm Megan, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Dr. Rob Annan, who is the President and CEO of Genome Canada. Welcome, Rob, and thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here, Megan. Thanks.
So I'll start off with a topic that is still a major concern for all of us. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a primary focus over the last 18 months. Can you expand on the Genome Canada-led Canadian COVID-19 Genomics Network and how it has contributed to the fight against COVID-19? What have been the accomplishments thus far, and what were your major challenges?
Sure, thanks, Megan. So the Canadian COVID-19 Genomics Network, or what we call CanCoGen, is a national network composed of public health labs, university research institutes, government, hospitals, who've come together around a couple of big projects in genomics. The first project is a large-scale viral sequencing initiative, really meant to act as a surveillance mechanism for tracking the spread of COVID through communities across borders, and of course, tracking the emergence and spread of variants. So that sequencing network, again, includes public health labs across the country and is designed to sequence, I think now we've just passed 180,000 viral sequences that are then contributed both to Canadian public health decision-making as well as global databases. The second big project is focused more on the human side, and it's a project that links together a variety of large-scale studies looking at the genetic linkages between COVID infection and disease severity. And so this is really meant more or less as a cohort study that will help us to understand both the immediate and long-term effects of COVID infection. So it's a really phenomenal network that came together very, very quickly. Genome Canada has responsibility for, in effect, kind of coordinating the activities and building a lot of the, say, soft infrastructure that has a lot of coordination, but it was very much a grassroots effort led by scientists across the country, public health labs across the country, who immediately realized that there was a genomic response to the COVID emergence. So we are proud to have kind of brought together the pieces, but it was really the research scientists and public health labs across the country that were the main drivers. In terms of the key accomplishments, certainly just getting the infrastructure up and running, both the hard and soft infrastructure to sequence viral samples across the country, and then to share that information in a usable manner was a huge undertaking and something that we count as a huge success. So that was a big deal. We've been able to help in terms of building capacity across the country. So one of the challenges early in the pandemic, particularly, was we just didn't have the response capabilities in terms of both technology and human capabilities to respond to the scale of the pandemic. And then I think the last part is linking these various human studies into a large kind of national cohort approach will yield us, I think, really important insights for many years to come. So these, I think, are pretty key accomplishments. Really, I think the main thing was just that we were able to mobilize quickly enough to provide meaningful information for public health decision makers, but did that in a way that allowed us to also build a foundation for future pandemics and future pandemic readiness. I'll end briefly just to say that, in terms of challenges, the really big challenge was around data sharing and the timeliness of being able to share health data, whether that was viral or human data, in a quick and easy way that went beyond strictly kind of public health measures into the public database that allows for international tracking and research. And this really reveals some fault lines that have long existed in the Canadian system, where health is a provincial priority, and it makes data sharing across provincial boundaries very difficult. So that's been an ongoing challenge that lots of people have worked hard on. We've made, I think, good progress on, but the federal government, who has really shown exceptional leadership through all of this, has also launched the development of a new pan-Canadian health data strategy, which hopefully will help us to build on the momentum we've kind of established in this space.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a very important work, and it's amazing how much you were able to do in such a short period of time, and with the limitations that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So as we move beyond the pandemic, it's a highly pivotal time at Genome Canada. You're looking at launching high-impact cross-sector genomics research and innovation missions. This builds on 20 years of growth and leadership. With the scientific and economic benefits of genomics becoming increasingly recognized globally, Can you tell us what the future of Genome Canada might look like?
Yeah, sure, Megan. I think to look at the future, first we need to look at the past. So if you go back 20 years in the establishment of Genome Canada, it was really at the end point of the Human Genome Project, and the Human Genome Project in some ways was sort of the kicked off what we can think of maybe as the modern era of genomics. And that first 10 years of Genome Canada's existence, we can sort of think of almost like Genome Canada 1.0. We were created really to lay the foundation for genomics research in Canada. And that, we were starting from scratch. Canada wasn't a partner in the sequencing of the human genome. So in a sense, we were playing a little bit of catch up, but we were lucky because we had some phenomenal scientists working in the space and working with them, as well as federal and provincial governments and universities across the country. We spent the first 10 years really building up the first generation of genomics researchers and the infrastructure that would be required to really kind of do genomics research at scale. The next 10 years, we can sort of think of as Genome Canada 2.0. And that was really when we realized we could build on that foundation now and start thinking about genomics as an applied science. And how can we start to, connect, the research with people that can actually use the products of that research. And so for the last 10 years at Genome Canada, we've really focused on that translational role of connecting the amazing technologies and cutting edge knowledge of genomics into industry, the public sector, and so on. Today, we're really at, I think, a really exciting time in genomics, where we are seeing not only the capability of sequencing having, the Human Genome Project took 15 years and a couple $2 billion, right? Well, now to sequence a human genome, you can do it effectively overnight for less than $1,000. So we're at a time now where sequencing power is something that would have been unimaginable 20 years ago. You combine that with the big data capabilities, both to manage that level of data as well as AI to analyze that data. We are generating insights like never before. And then you combine that with the tools like CRISPR gene editing tools, as well as synthetic biology and whatnot. You end up with a confluence of factors that really is, I think, going to kick off a new sort of golden age for genomics. And so as we look ahead, we see what's effectively a biorevolution in the making, something that we've seen with the generation of these new mRNA vaccines and in record time and other responses to the COVID pandemic. And I think the next 30 years is really going to do in biosciences what, say, the last 30 years did in digital sciences. So we're very excited. So we're thinking about Genome Canada 3.0 and are adopting a mission-driven strategy, which really goes from kind of a more technology-driven approach. The last 10 years has been about getting this technology into people's hands, to starting with the big challenges and the big questions people have. And those questions, are things that we know genomics can make a difference, whether that's in agriculture, in health, or, say, environment and climate change. We can start with those impacts and now go back and say, okay, how do we build a portfolio of projects? How do we bring the right people to the table to generate the impacts that are going to help us solve some of these big challenges? So we're very excited about this next phase for Genome Canada.
So how can this missions-based strategy take advantage of the power of genomics to strengthen Canada's global leadership in the field, as well as produce benefits for all Canadians?
So to build on what I was saying, the thing with a mission-driven approach is that it really starts with the outcome you're driving towards. So it allows us to focus on what impact we want to have, as opposed to thinking about what tools we have at our disposal. So the old saying, like when all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail, right? Instead of thinking, well, we have these genomics tools, how do we now just go out and apply them? We can actually start to ask the big questions and around environmental challenges, sort of energy transition, precision health, and new technologies in the medical space, thinking about agriculture and climate change. So this mission-based approach allows us as Canadians to in a sense identify where we want to actually have the most impact, and then bring together kind of like multi-stakeholder groups, different types of technologies and research endeavors, as well as connect into other technologies, whether that's things like AI or things like biomanufacturing. It allows us to, in a sense, build the coalition required to deliver the impact instead of starting with the research project. The last thing I'll say is it also allows a much more equitable approach to our work. I think more generally on, just from a kind of a science policy lens, science has worked certainly in the last 40 or 50 years with a bit of a trickle down philosophy. We know science has benefits to society. We see that all around us. But there's been this sense that if we just make good investments in research, everybody will benefit. It's clear that that's not the case, that there are some people that benefit more than others. We see this in the way we design our research projects. We know what kinds of projects get funded. A mission-based approach allows us to bring everybody to the table at the beginning and ask questions like, who will benefit from this investment? Do we have the right people here helping us define the questions and the challenges that we're going to approach? And then that way we can make sure that when the impacts do manifest, that they're actually shared by everybody.
Thanks, Rob. That's really interesting. Could you please share more details on how Genome Canada plans to play a unique role in the years to come within Canada's science and innovation ecosystem?
Sure. So Genome Canada, we've evolved with the times, and one of the things I think that's crucially important for everybody in the science and innovation ecosystem is recognizing the importance of connections and working collectively and on these big challenges, and coordinating the investments that are being made, ensuring that there's effective handoffs across the system. And so we continue to do that. We think we play an important and unique role in the ecosystem, really because we are working in a multi-stakeholder, multi-sector, and multidisciplinary space. So on the disciplinary side, of course, when we think of genomics, we think of sequencing and we think of technologies that can be deployed in hospitals, let's say. But genomics has a much broader set of areas of question and areas of inquiry, including what we call GELS. GELS is an acronym we use that stands for genomics, and it's ethical, environmental, economic, legal, and social impacts. So this is really thinking about in a sense, the societal place for genomics. How do we actually deploy these technologies? What are the impacts it has? In what ways is it going to disrupt existing systems? To what degree are there barriers to adoption? So investing in this kind of the social science side of genomics is just as important for us as it is in the technology side, because it's crucial to its eventual responsible adoption. The other thing is, I think, making sure that we're playing this translational role, working with the granting councils and investments in fundamental research, which, of course, are fundamental not just to our knowledge, but fundamental to our science ecosystem. So we need to have strong investment in fundamental science, and we need strong investment in the innovation ecosystem and how we turn ideas into economic impact, health impact, and so on. That translational piece is a challenge, and it's a challenge around the world, and it's a challenge in different disciplines. We have 20 years now of experience in living in that space. How do we actually do that translation? So this new mission-based approach is really an evolution of that translational role. And then the last thing I'll say is around this question, I think, is around the concept of inclusive genomics. And this is a focus for us now and going forward, which is to think about our both representation and participation in genomics, and ensuring that there is diversity and an equitable participation in the work that we do, the benefits that come from it, and representation within databases and so on, so that the benefits are more, I would say, broadly shared than they've traditionally been in the past. So those are a couple of key areas, I think, where we're playing, I think, an important and unique role in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. As you know, our meeting today falls within days of the most recent election. What are the biggest challenges facing the new parliament, and what new approaches would you like to see implemented?
Well, I'll limit my comments to maybe the science space, because there are a lot of challenges facing this government and society in general right now. But on the science file, I think it's a very interesting time. So because we're still in the COVID pandemic, but hopefully, on the sort of the latter part of that pandemic, we are able to see that science is saving us in this moment, and whether that's vaccines, whether that's other novel therapeutics, whether that's the ability to do tracking, testing, and so on, science is playing a really big role right now. The challenge going forward will be to, in a sense, kind of maintain the level of interest and support that science has enjoyed for the last year and a half, and not to simply move on when this moment passes. There will be a lot of pressure on the government to move on to the next big thing, and that's understandable, right? Governments focus on the priority of the day, but we learned from the SARS crisis 20 years ago that taking our eye off the ball meant that we weren't prepared when COVID came around this time. So we need to make sure that we're continuing to invest in the scientific infrastructure we've built now, but that we also are investing in the fundamental work that will allow us to respond rapidly when the next crisis hits. Because we know that crises are coming, not just future pandemics, but the climate crisis is upon us. And so we need to respond to that. And there will be other crises, and science can help. So I think it's absolutely crucial that the governments keep their eye on the ball and don't sort of think, okay, good, well, job done, we can move on to other things. The last thing I'll say on this is that, and as a corollary here is, I think we're seeing, and in some ways we're in the middle of it now, the challenges with misinformation and disinformation. And this is certainly true in the scientific space, but it's true broadly speaking across society, and it's generating a lot of mistrust in mistrust in expertise and in authority, mistrust in science. So I think that we really do risk a bit of a crisis here, if this is in a sense left untended, because this challenge is not going to go away. And I think we as a scientific community, we also have a responsibility to, in a sense, renew the social contract between science and society, and to demonstrate that we are listening and we are participating in the broader social dialogue.
Yeah, I think science policy is it's more important now than it really ever has been.
Agreed.
Speaking of that, you've been a consistent supporter of the Canadian Science Policy Centre for years now. So I'm wondering, what would you consider to be CSPC's greatest impact, and what types of projects would you like to see us focus on in the next few years?
So as you say, I've been a big supporter of CSPC for a long time. And in fact, I cast my mind back to the very first science policy conference that CSPC put on. And at the time, I was a graduate student, just finishing, or looking towards finishing my PhD. And I knew that, an academic research career wasn't really my passion. My passion was sort of at this intersection of science and society and government and systems. And I didn't really know how to kind of, in a sense, put my finger on it. I had started blogging, which was at the time really big, and felt kind of alone in this space. And when the CSPC hosted its first conference, I finally had a chance to, in a sense, put a name on what I was doing, what I was interested in. I went to that conference and found so many like-minded people. And it was really from there that I think that there was a bit of a snowball effect in terms of building a community of practice, a community of supporters around science policy in the country. And the CSPC has done a phenomenal job of convening discussions, sustained discussions on topics that are, I think, central to science policy. So really, I see, just fostering the sort of the ecosystem in Canada and moving it outside. I think science policy always had a place within government, but building those linkages out and growing the skills, knowledge, and experience into the academic space, the industry space, was crucial for the CSPC, sort of really contributed to. So that's a huge success. And, going forward, I think, continuing that, maintaining that mandate, understanding the responsibility, and in a sense, expanding the range of voices being included, I think will be really crucial. I think one of the big areas that we as a scientific community have a lot of work to do is to understand ways to, I think, understand and integrate Indigenous ways of knowing into our work, and thinking about how a kind of contemporary science policy mind frame is going to work with traditional ways of knowing, and bringing those two pieces together for the scientific community, I think, is going to be crucial going forward, and is also a big challenge. So I think CSPC can play a really big role in a space like that. I think looking beyond the current, and I think in terms of bringing in new voices, I love the number of students that come into the CSPC pipeline. I was once one of those students, and I got to meet, kind of the people who were experienced in the space. What I miss most about the in-person conferences is having the chance to meet people now, both people that were mentors to me, but also young people that I can provide, my experiences to. Doing more of that, I think, is always important, but also getting beyond kind of like government and academia and then a bit of industry. Like, how do we think of other groups? And here I'm thinking about, kind of more in the, kind of like social group space, right? Community space. People that don't think of themselves as scientists or science policy people, but who are working on the ground addressing issues like around the opioid crisis or around homelessness or other big social problems. Science policy can help, and science policy can learn. And so building those connections with kind of non-traditional kind of groups in terms of the sectors we work with, I think is a real opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as one of those students that's now part of CSPC, I hope to work on those projects this year.
Good.
So thank you so much, Rob, for taking the time to speak with us today. We all look forward to seeing you at the 2021 CSPC conference.
Excellent. Well, thanks for the opportunity, Megan. I really enjoyed it.
Hello, because